The mop clattered against the hallway floor as Yuki froze, her rounded belly pressing against the cleaning cart she'd been pushing down the sterile corridor of Cypress Tower in downtown Denver. Ada? That voice. God, that voice still made something inside her chest twist painfully even after 7 months of silence. 7 months of scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins while her baby grew heavier inside her. 7 months of pretending she didn't wake up, reaching for someone who'd made it clear she wasn't enough. She turned slowly, one hand instinctively moving to cradle her stomach beneath the worn fabric of her uniform. Park Ji-Hwan stood 15 feet away in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she'd make in 6 months, his dark eyes wide with something that looked almost like shock, pain. She couldn't tell any more, probably never could. "What are you doing here?" His question came out rough, unpolished in a way that didn't match the expensive watch on his wrist or the way his hair was perfectly styled back from his forehead. Ada lifted her chin, fighting the urge to run or cry or maybe both. Working, obviously. Her accent, thick with the Cameroon French she'd grown up speaking before learning English, felt heavier now. "What does it look like?" He took a step forward, then stopped, like something invisible had yanked him back. His gaze dropped to her belly and stayed there, and she watched his throat work as he swallowed. When? 7 months. She cut him off because she couldn't stand the way he was looking at her, like she was something fragile that might break. "Not that it's your concern anymore." "Not my—" He laughed, but there was nothing funny about the sound. "Ada, whose baby is that?" The question hit her like a slap, and for a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm asking because I need to know." His voice had gone cold, that businessman tone he used when he was negotiating deals or shutting people out. "We broke up 7 months ago. 8, actually." She gripped the mop handle harder, needing something to hold on to. "And yes, Ji-Hwan, it's yours. Not that you deserve to know, considering you threw me out of your life like I was nothing." His jaw tightened. "That's not— I didn't throw you out. No, you just made it very clear I wasn't the right fit for your world." The words tasted bitter. "Too poor, too foreign, too much of an embarrassment for someone like you." "I never said that. You didn't have to." She turned back to her cart, blinking hard against the tears threatening to spill. "Your mother said it enough for both of you." She heard him move closer, felt the warmth of him at her back even though he didn't touch her. "Why didn't you tell me? About the baby?" "I tried." Her voice cracked despite her best efforts to keep it steady. 3 times, Ji-Hwan. I called. I texted. I even came to your office. Your secretary wouldn't let me past the lobby, said you'd left instructions not to let me through, so I stopped trying. Figured you'd made your choice pretty clear." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. A door opened somewhere down the hall, and voices drifted toward them. Laughter and casual conversation that felt wrong somehow. Too normal for this moment that was tearing her apart all over again. "I'm moving locations next week," she said, finally forcing herself to sound casual, unbothered. "You won't have to worry about running into me again." "Ada, wait." His hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm, and the contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." She pulled free, grabbed her cart. "I've managed fine without you for 7 months. I'll manage fine after the baby comes too. Go back to whatever brought you here, Ji-Hwan. Forget you saw me." But she could feel his eyes on her as she walked away, feel the weight of his stare boring into her back, and she knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because Park Ji-Hwan didn't let things go, never had, and now there was a baby involved, his baby, and everything about this was about to get so much more complicated than her exhausted heart could handle. The elevator doors closed between them, and she finally let herself cry. 2 days later, flowers showed up at her apartment in Aurora. Not expensive roses or exotic orchids, but sunflowers, bright and cheerful and completely overwhelming in their quantity. The card read simply, "We need to talk. Please. J.H." Ada threw the card in the trash and tried to ignore the way her traitorous heart skipped at seeing his handwriting again, those precise strokes that matched everything else about him, controlled and careful and utterly maddening. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she knew before she even looked. I don't want your flowers, she said instead of hello. Then tell me what you do want. His voice was softer than she remembered, lacking that edge he usually carried. Coffee? Tea? Food? A conversation where you're not running away from me? I wasn't running. I was working. Ada, he sighed, and she could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was frustrated. I'm parked outside your building. Can I come up? 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. She looked down at her swollen ankles, at the worn carpet of her tiny studio apartment, at the second-hand furniture she'd scraped together from thrift stores and garage sales. This place was nothing like his penthouse in Cherry Creek, nothing like the world he inhabited, and maybe that was exactly why she should say yes. Let him see what his rejection had relegated her to. Fine. She hung up before she could change her mind. He knocked exactly 3 minutes later, and when she opened the door, she wasn't prepared for how tired he looked, how the shadows under his eyes made him seem almost vulnerable. He'd traded the expensive suit for jeans and a plain black shirt, but somehow he still looked out of place in her dingy hallway. Come in, I guess. She stepped back, watched him take in her apartment in one sweeping glance. It's not much, but stop. He turned to face her, and there was something fierce in his expression. Don't apologize for anything, not to me, not after. Just don't. They stood there in awkward silence until her back started aching, and she had to sit down on the lumpy couch that had come with the place. He sat too, carefully leaving space between them, his hands clasped between his knees. I didn't know, he said finally. About the calls, the texts, you trying to reach me. After things ended, I changed my number, told my secretary I didn't want to hear about anything that wasn't business related. I was trying to move on, trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice walking away, and I thought... He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. I was wrong, so incredibly wrong. Ada pressed her palms against her belly, feeling her daughter kick. Why did you walk away, really? And don't give me that line about us being too different or your family not approving. I want the truth, Ji-Hwan. He was quiet for so long she thought maybe he wouldn't answer, but then he said, I was scared. Is that pathetic enough for you? I was 28 years old, running organizations my father built, trying to prove I was worthy of his legacy, and then there was you. This beautiful, brilliant woman who made me want things I didn't know how to want. A real relationship, a real life outside of meetings and obligations and expectations. He looked at her finally and his eyes were raw. My mother said I was being reckless, that I needed to focus on suitable matches that would benefit the family, and I let her convince me she was right. I let her convince me that what we had wasn't real. Enough. Wasn't important enough. But it was real, Ada whispered. At least for me. For me too. His voice broke slightly. God, Ada, for me too, and I've spent 7 months trying to forget that and failing miserably. Every day I'd wonder where you were, if you were okay, if you hated me as much as I hated myself. And now I find out you were pregnant this whole time, going through everything alone because I was too much of a coward to fight for what mattered. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt that had carried her through the loneliest months of her life. But looking at him now, seeing the genuine regret in every line of his face. What do you want from me, Ji-Hwan? Really? Another chance. He shifted closer, still not touching, but near enough that she could smell his cologne. That familiar scent that used to cling to her clothes after they'd been together. A chance to be there for you and our baby. A chance to prove I'm not the person who walked away. No, I don't deserve it. I know I've already proven I can't be trusted with your heart, but I'm asking anyway because I can't walk away again. Not now that I know. Her daughter kicked hard against her ribs and Ada winced. Ji-Hwan's hand moved automatically, hovering over her belly, and she found herself nodding. He pressed his palm gently against where the baby was moving, and his expression transformed into something so tender it made her throat tight. She's strong, he murmured. She? How do you... I'm hoping. He smiled, small and genuine. I always wanted a daughter. And there it was, that crack in her armour she'd worked so hard to maintain, that tiny fissure that let hope seep back in despite everything. One chance, she heard herself say, but if you disappear again, if you decide this is too much or your family's more important, I need you to do it now before she's born, before she knows you exist. Can you promise me that? I promise, he said immediately. I'm here, Ada, for however long you'll let me be. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so desperately it scared her. But she'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it true. Still, when he asked if he could take her to dinner the next evening somewhere quiet where they could talk more, she said yes. Maybe she was being foolish. Probably she was setting herself up for more heartbreak. But as he left and she pressed her hand to where his had been on her belly, feeling their daughter roll and stretch beneath her palm, she thought, maybe, just maybe some risks were worth taking. Dinner turned into breakfast, which turned into him showing up at her apartment every evening after her shifts ended, bringing food from that Congolese restaurant she loved in the Montbello neighbourhood, the one that reminded her of home with its spicy ondole and perfectly fried plantains. They talked about everything and nothing, rebuilding something between them that felt both familiar and entirely new. "Tell me about Cameroon," he said one night as they sat on her floor eating fufu with eru soup because her couch was too uncomfortable for her pregnant body. "You never talked much about your childhood before." Ada wiped her hands on a napkin, considering. "My father died when I was 9, left my mother with 4 kids and a small shop in Douala that barely made enough to feed us. She worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep us fed and in school, and when I got the scholarship to study in the States, she cried for 3 days straight because she was so happy and so scared I'd leave and never come back." "Did you? Go back?" "Once, right after I graduated from community college. She'd gotten sick, pneumonia that wouldn't clear up, and I used every penny I'd saved to fly home and take care of her." She smiled sadly. "She recovered, told me I was foolish for wasting my money, that I should have stayed and built my life. But how could I not go? She's my mother." Ji-Hwan reached over and laced his fingers through hers. "You're incredibly strong, you know that." "I'm tired," she admitted. "So tired of struggling, of working 2 jobs and still barely making rent, of wondering if I'm going to be able to give my daughter even half of what she deserves." "Your daughter," she corrected herself. "Our daughter," he squeezed her hand. "And I want to help with that, Ada. Let me help. I don't want your money. I know you don't, which is exactly why I trust you with it." He shifted to face her fully. "I'm not trying to buy my way into your life or assuage my guilt. I'm trying to make sure the mother of my child isn't destroying her body cleaning office buildings while 7 months pregnant. Please let me at least do that much." Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I'm paying you back. We'll argue about that later." He grinned, and it was like seeing the sun break through storm clouds. "Right now, I want to talk. About names. Have you thought about what you want to call her?" They spent the rest of the evening debating names, laughing over increasingly ridiculous suggestions, until Ada's sides hurt and her cheeks ached from smiling. This was what she'd missed most, she realised. Not the fancy dates or expensive gifts, but this easy comfort. This sense of being known and accepted exactly as she was. When he left that night, he pressed a kiss to her forehead that felt like a promise, and she leaned into it despite the voice in her head warning her to be careful. The first crack in their tentative peace came 3 weeks later, when Ada answered her door to find an elegant woman in her 60s standing in the hallway, her expression cold enough to freeze water. She didn't need an introduction to know who this was. Ji-Hwan's mother had that same precise way of holding herself, that same ability to make you feel small with just a look. "Ms. Okafor," not a question, not a greeting, just a statement of fact. "We need to talk." "Mrs. Park," Ada kept her hand on the door, not inviting her in. "I'm not sure we have anything to discuss." "Oh, I think we do." The woman's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "May I come in? Or would you prefer we have this conversation where your neighbours can hear?" Reluctantly, Ada stepped back, gesturing toward the living space. Mrs. Park entered like she was inspecting a crime scene, her gaze cataloguing every worn surface, every patch of peeling paint, every sign of Ada's poverty. The judgment rolled off her in waves. "I'll get straight to the point," Mrs. Park said, remaining standing even though Ada had lowered herself carefully onto the couch. "My son has informed me about your situation. While I appreciate that you're in a difficult position, I'm here to offer you a solution that benefits everyone involved. I'm not interested in your money if that's where this is going." "It's not just money, dear." The endearment sounded like an insult. "It's an entire future for your child. The best schools, the best healthcare, every opportunity. All I'm asking in return is that you disappear quietly, let Ji-Hwan move forward with his life unencumbered." The word hit like a physical blow. Unencumbered? Yes. Mrs. Park pulled an envelope from her designer purse, set it on the coffee table. That's a cashier's check for $500,000, enough to set you and your baby up comfortably anywhere you'd like to go. Somewhere far from Denver, preferably. You could go back to Cameroon, give your child a connection to your heritage. I'm told the exchange rate is quite favourable. Ada stared at the envelope like it might bite her. You want me to take your money and disappear? Act like Ji-Hwan's daughter doesn't exist? I want you to be realistic. The woman's tone sharpened. My son is going through a phase, feeling responsible because of the pregnancy. But that will fade. He has obligations, a position to maintain, expectations to meet. You're a lovely girl, I'm sure, but you're not suitable for the life he needs to lead. This baby, it's a complication that will only hold him back. Get out! Ada's voice came out low, shaking with barely contained fury. Get out of my apartment right now. Miss Okafor, be reasonable. I said get out. She pushed herself up off the couch, ignoring the protest in her lower back. Your son's daughter is not a complication, and I'm not some obstacle you can pay to remove. If Ji-Hwan wants to be part of her life, that's between him and me, not you. Now leave before I call building security. Mrs. Park's expression went ice cold. You're making a mistake. I could make your life very difficult, you know. One phone call to immigration, questions about your visa status. My visa is perfectly legal, and even if it wasn't threatening me... Really? Ada laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? Ji-Hwan said you were the reason he walked away before, that you convinced him I wasn't. Good enough. I didn't want to believe him, thought maybe he was just making excuses for his own cowardice. But now I see he was telling the truth. You really do think you can control everyone around you. I'm protecting my son. No, you're suffocating him. Ada moved to the door, opened it wide. And you're about to lose him completely if you keep this up. Now get out. The older woman retrieved her envelope, slipped it back into her purse with movements that spoke of barely restrained anger. This isn't over, Ms. Okafor, not by a long shot. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. Ada waited until Mrs. Park stepped into the hallway before adding, but here's something for you to think about. Your son chose to come back into my life, chose to try again despite everything that happened. Maybe instead of fighting me, you should ask yourself why he'd rather risk everything with someone like me than accept whatever perfect life you've planned for him. She closed the door before Mrs. Park could respond, then sank back onto the couch with shaking hands pressed over her face. Her daughter kicked insistently and she whispered, I know, baby girl, I know. Your grandmother is a piece of work. Her phone rang almost immediately. Ji-Hwan. Did my mother just leave your apartment? He sounded breathless, furious. Ada, please tell me she didn't. $500,000, she said flatly. That's apparently what I'm worth. Or rather, that's what she thinks it'll cost to make me disappear. Silence, then a string of what she assumed were Korean curse words. I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was going to do that. She cornered me at lunch, demanded to know why I'd been neglecting my responsibilities lately, and I told her about you and the baby. I don't know what I thought. Maybe that she'd surprise me by being supportive for once, but clearly I was wrong. She threatened to call immigration on me, more cursing, louder this time. I'll handle her. I should have handled her 8 months ago instead of letting her manipulate me into walking away. This is my fault. It's her fault, Ada corrected. You're an adult, yeah, but she's the one who can't accept that her son might want something different than what she's planned. Still, Ji-Hwan, this is going to get messy. You know that, right? She's not going to back down. Neither am I. His voice was firm, determined. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this face to face. He showed up 40 minutes later with Thai food from her favourite place on Colfax and an expression that screamed barely controlled rage. They ate in tense silence until Ada finally said, Stop looking like you want to murder someone. It's making me nervous. I'm sorry. He set down his fork, scrubbed his hands over his face. I'm just so angry at her, at myself for ever listening to her in the first place. She had no right to come here, no right to threaten you or try to buy you off like you're some kind of problem. To solve. She thinks she's protecting you. She's controlling me, or trying to. There's a difference. He reached across the table, took her hand. I need you to know something, Ada. Whatever happens with my mother, whatever she tries to do, I'm not walking away again. She can threaten, she can manipulate, she can disown me for all I care. You and our daughter come first. You say that now, she started, but he cut her off. I say that now, and I'll say it tomorrow, and every day after that until you believe me." His grip tightened. "I know I haven't earned your trust back yet. I know I destroyed it 8 months ago when I let my fear and her manipulation drive you away. But I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove I've changed, that I'm stronger now than I was then." Ada wanted to believe him, but Mrs. Park's words kept echoing in her head. What if she's right, though? What if this is just a phase and eventually you realize I really am too different, too complicated, too much of a liability for your world? Then my world can go to hell. He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly that she almost laughed. "Ada, I spent 8 months trying to fit into the mold my mother created, dating women she approved of, attending events with people who bored me senseless. And you know what? I was miserable. Every single day I thought about you, wondered what you were doing, if you'd found someone who deserved you better than I did. And now I find out you were pregnant and struggling while I was pretending to be someone I'm not. That ends now, all of it. Your mum's not going to accept this, accept us. She doesn't have to." He moved around the table, knelt carefully beside her chair so he could look up at her. "I'm not asking her permission. I'm asking you. Will you let me do this right? Let me take care of you and our daughter? Be the man I should have been from the start?" She studied his face, searching for any hint of doubt or hesitation, but all she saw was determination and something that looked suspiciously like love. "Okay," she whispered. "But the first time you waver, the first time you even think about choosing her over us, I'm done. Understand? I won't put my daughter through a lifetime of feeling like she's not enough. I understand." He pressed a kiss to her palm, then to her belly where their daughter was doing somersaults. "I won't let you down, either of you." The next few weeks were strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Ji-Hwan started staying over most nights, sleeping on her lumpy couch because he insisted he wanted to be there if she needed anything, never mind that his back was probably screaming from the torture device, masquerading as furniture. He went with her to her prenatal appointments, held her hand during the ultrasounds, and cried actual tears when they confirmed the baby was definitely a girl. "We're having a daughter," he kept saying, like he couldn't quite believe it. A little girl. They decided on a name together, Kamara, which meant moonlight in Mandinka, and felt right somehow, a bridge between their two worlds. Ji-Hwan's face when she suggested it was worth every moment of uncertainty that had led them here. He took her to the Botanical Gardens in York Street on a sunny Saturday afternoon, walking slowly through the tropical conservatory while she admired the plants and tried not to waddle too obviously. They sat by the koi pond, and he told her stories about growing up in Seoul before his family moved to the States when he was 12, about feeling caught between cultures and never quite fitting anywhere. "That's why I understand you more than you might think," he said, watching the fish swirl lazily through the water. "That feeling of being outside looking in, of trying to prove you belong. I've spent my whole life doing that, trying to be Korean enough for my parents and American enough for everyone else. And now," she leaned against his shoulder, grateful, for the solid warmth of him. "Now I'm trying to just be myself, whoever that is, and hope it's enough." He kissed the top of her head. "For you, for Kamara, for the life I want to build." They bought her baby clothes at a boutique in Cherry Creek that probably cost more than Ada made in a month. Tiny dresses and onesies that Ji-Hwan held up with such tenderness it made her heart hurt. He insisted on getting everything: a crib, a changing table, bottles, blankets, all the things she'd been slowly collecting from thrift stores and discount bins. "You don't have to do all this," she protested, even as he loaded another box into his car. "I want to." He looked at her over the top of the car. "Please, let me do this. I missed so much already, all those months when I should have been helping you prepare. Let me make up for at least some of it." How could she argue with that? So she let him transform her tiny apartment into something that actually felt like it could be a home for their daughter. He even hired someone to come paint the walls a soft yellow, claiming the off-white was depressing. But underneath the domesticity, tension simmered. Mrs. Park called him constantly, left increasingly angry voicemails that he played for Ada so there'd be no secrets between them. She heard the woman's voice hiss accusations, threats, desperate attempts to manipulate her son back under her control. "She's saying I'm throwing my life away," Ji-Hwan said, after one particularly vicious message, "that I'm being controlled by a woman who got pregnant to trap me. Maybe I did. Ada tried to make it a joke, but it fell flat. You didn't. He deleted the message, tossed his phone aside. You didn't even tell me, remember? If anyone was trying to trap anyone, I'm pretty sure I'm the one who forced my way back into your life, not the other way around. That was true, probably, but it didn't make the accusations hurt less. What if part of him believed them? What if eventually he started wondering? As if reading her mind, he pulled her close, careful of her belly between them. Stop. Whatever you're thinking, stop. I know the truth, and that's all that matters. But the doubt had been planted, and Ada couldn't quite shake it, no matter how many times he reassured her or how genuine his actions seemed. Mrs. Park's poison was working, just maybe not the way the woman intended. Everything came to a head on a Tuesday evening when Ada was 35 weeks pregnant and so uncomfortable she could barely sleep. Ji-Hwan had gone to handle some business issue he'd been avoiding, promising he'd be back with her favourite Moroccan food from the place in Capitol Hill, and she was dozing on the couch when someone knocked. Not Mrs. Park this time. A woman roughly Ada's age stood in the hallway, beautiful in that effortless way some people managed, her designer outfit probably costing more than Ada's entire wardrobe. Her smile was friendly, but something about her eyes felt calculated. "Can I help you?" Ada asked, keeping the door mostly closed. "I'm Seo-Yun, an old friend of Ji-Hwan's." The woman's English was perfect, barely accented. "I heard about his situation and wanted to come by, offer my support. May I come in?" Every instinct screamed danger, but Ada found herself stepping back because what else could she do? Seo-Yun entered like she belonged there, settling delicately on the edge of the couch and looking around with barely concealed distaste. "So you're the woman who's captured our Ji-Hwan's attention," she said, and there was definitely something sharp beneath the pleasant tone. "I have to admit I'm surprised. You're not really his usual type. And you would know because—" Ada lowered herself into the armchair, wishing Ji-Hwan would get back. "Because we dated for 2 years before he ended things to be with you." Seo-Yun's smile widened. "Oh, he didn't tell you about me? How interesting. I suppose there's a lot he hasn't told you then." The room felt like it was tilting. "You're lying." "Am I? Ask him about the gala we attended last December, or the skiing trip to Aspen in February. Ask him why he was still calling me right up until he found out about your pregnancy." She pulled out her phone, started scrolling. "I have pictures if you don't believe me." Ada didn't want to look, didn't want to see, but Seo-Yun was already turning the screen toward her, and there they were, Ji-Hwan and this woman, at some fancy event. His arm around her waist, both of them smiling for the camera. The date stamp said January 15th, 2 months ago. "He told me he wasn't seeing anyone," Ada heard herself say, "that he'd been miserable since we broke up." "He told you what you wanted to hear." Seo-Yun tucked her phone away. "Look, I'm not here to cause problems. I actually feel sorry for you, getting involved with someone like him. Ji-Hwan is great at playing the reformed bad boy, at making women feel like they're special and different. But at the end of the day, he always comes back to his own kind, to women his family approves of, women who understand his world. Then why are you here? If you're so confident he'll come back to you?" "Because his mother asked me to come, to help you see reason." Seo-Yun's mask of friendliness slipped slightly. "She's prepared to increase her offer. $1 million for you to leave quietly, give Ji-Hwan and me a chance to build the life we were meant to have. Think about it. You'd never have to worry about money again, your daughter would be taken care of, and you wouldn't have to watch Ji-Hwan eventually realize he made a mistake. Get out." Ada's voice shook, but she forced herself to stand. "I don't care what pictures you have or what lies you're telling. Ji-Hwan and I, we're working through things, and whatever you two had is in the past." "Is it? Because he was just at my apartment last week." Seo-Yun stood too, smoothing down her skirt. "Ask him about it if you don't believe me. Ask him what we discussed over wine and dinner." She left before Ada could respond, the door clicking shut with an air of finality that made everything inside her go cold. She sank back into the chair, pressing both hands to her belly where Kamara was kicking up a storm, and tried to breathe through the panic clawing at her throat. It wasn't true, couldn't be true. Ji-Hwan wouldn't lie to her, not about something like this, not after everything they'd been through. But the pictures looked real, and why would this woman lie about something so easily verified? Her phone buzzed. Ji-Hwan. "Running late, sorry. The restaurant messed up the order. Be there in 20 minutes. She stared at the text, then typed back, Where were you last Tuesday evening? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. At my office, dealing with the Singapore contracts. Why? Not at Seo Yun's apartment then, unless he was lying, unless everything was a lie. When he arrived, she was still sitting in the same chair, hadn't moved except to turn on the lamp as darkness fell. He took one look at her face and dropped the food on the counter, coming to kneel in front of her chair. What happened? What's wrong? Is it the baby? Who's Seo Yun? She asked, and watched his expression shift from concern to something complicated. Did she come here? When Ada nodded, his jaw tightened. What did she tell you? That you dated for 2 years, that you were still seeing her 2 months ago, that you were at her apartment last week. She pulled out her phone, showed him the photo Seo Yun had sent her before leaving. Is any of that true? He was quiet for a long moment, and that silence told her everything she needed to know. Some of it, he finally admitted. We did date, but it ended before I met you. And yes, I saw her in January at a charity event my mother insisted I attend, but we weren't together. As for last week, I was at her apartment, but not for the reasons you're thinking. Then what reasons? Her voice came out flat, emotionless, because if she let herself feel anything right now, she'd shatter. Explain it to me, Ji-Hwan, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been playing both sides, keeping your options open in case things with me don't work out. No. He grabbed her hands, held them tight even when she tried to pull away. That's not what happened. Seo Yun called me last week, said she had some information about my mother's plans that I needed to hear. I went to her apartment because I thought she was trying to help, but it was just another setup, another attempt to drive a wedge between us. She tried to kiss me. I pushed her away and left, and I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry about it when you're already stressed enough. So you just decided to keep secrets. Ada laughed, bitter. That's so much better, Ji-Hwan. Really. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because what it sounds like is that you still have one foot in your old world, still keeping connections to women your mother approves of just in case I don't work out. What it sounds like is that I'm the backup plan, the obligation you're trying to do right by because of Kamara, not because you actually want to be with me. That's not true, his voice cracked. Ada, you have to believe me. That's not true at all. I love you. I've loved you since the first time you laughed at one of my terrible jokes and didn't pretend it was funny. Since the first time you called me out for being pretentious about wine. Since the first morning I woke up next to you and realized I never wanted to wake up any other way. I love you, and I'm so sorry I didn't tell you about Seo Yun showing up, but I swear on everything I am that I have never cheated on you. Not before and not now. The words hung between them, raw and desperate, and Ada wanted so badly to believe them. But how could she when everyone kept telling her she wasn't enough, when the evidence kept piling up that she was foolish for thinking this could ever work? I need some time, she said finally, pulling her hands free. I need to think about all of this without you here looking at me like that, making me want to forgive you before I've even processed what happened. Ada, please. Go, Ji-Hwan. She couldn't look at him anymore. Just go, okay? We'll talk tomorrow when I'm not so emotional and pregnant and confused. He left reluctantly, and she sat alone in the apartment he'd helped make into a home, surrounded by all the things he'd bought for their daughter, and cried until she had no tears left. Kamara kicked and rolled, and Ada pressed her hand to her belly, whispering, I'm trying, baby girl. I'm trying so hard to figure out what's right, but I'm so scared of making another mistake. Her phone buzzed again. Not Ji-Hwan this time, but a number she didn't recognize. The message made her blood run, cold. He'll never choose you over his family. Save yourself the heartbreak and take the money while the offer stands. Mrs. Park. She didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling and listening to her daughter move inside her. By morning she'd made a decision, one that hurt but felt necessary if she was going to protect what was left of her heart. Ji-Hwan showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee, her favourite breakfast pastries from the French bakery in Reno, and an expression that suggested he hadn't slept either. She let him in, accepted the food because she was starving, and waited until they were both sitting before she said, I want a paternity test. He flinched like she'd slapped him. You don't believe Kamara is mine? I know she's yours, but you need to know it too. Officially, legally. So your mother can't ever claim I was lying or trying to trap you or any of the other things she's probably saying. Ada wrapped her hands around the warm coffee cup. And I want a custody agreement drawn up before she's born, something that protects both of us and makes sure she's taken care of regardless of what happens between you and me. What happens? He set down his coffee carefully. You're planning on this not working out. I'm planning for reality, Ji-Hwan. Your mother hates me, your ex-girlfriend or whatever Seo-Yun is to you, is actively trying to sabotage us, and you're caught in the middle trying to please everyone. Something has to give eventually, and I need to make sure when it does, Kamara is protected. She'll be protected because I'll be here. His voice was firm. I've told you that repeatedly. And I want to believe you, but words are easy, right? Your mother throws money around and suddenly people show up with pictures and stories designed to make me doubt everything. Your ex shows up claiming you were at her place last week. How many more surprises am I supposed to handle before I'm allowed to protect myself? He was quiet for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was softer. You're right. I've given you no reason to trust me completely, not after walking away the first time, and definitely not after keeping things from you, even if I thought I was protecting you. So yeah, okay, we'll do the paternity test, we'll get the custody agreement, whatever makes you feel secure, but Ada? He reached across the small space between them on the couch, careful not to touch her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. I'm not walking away again, not because of my mother or Seo-Yun or anyone else. You and Kamara are my family now, the only family that matters, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that if I have to. She wanted to believe him so desperately it physically hurt. What if it's not enough? What if you wake up one day and realize your mother was right, that I really am too different, too complicated? Then I guess I'll have to prove you wrong about that too. He smiled, small and sad and somehow still hopeful. Starting with cutting my mother off completely until she can learn to respect my choices and treat you like the incredible woman you are. You can't do that. She's your mother. She threatened the woman I love and our unborn child. His expression went hard. Whatever maternal claim she thinks she has, she lost it when she tried to pay you to disappear. So yes, I can do that, and I will. The paternity test came back exactly as they both knew it would, confirming Ji-Hwan as Kamara's father with 99.9% certainty. The lawyers drew up custody agreements that were fair and comprehensive, ensuring Kamara would be cared for financially and emotionally regardless of whether her parents stayed together. And through it all, Ji-Hwan showed up every single day, proving through actions rather than words that he meant what he said. He went with her to birthing classes, practiced breathing exercises even though the instructor kept giving him amused looks when he took them way too seriously. He installed the car seat in both his car and hers, watching YouTube videos 3 times to make sure he did it right. He read pregnancy books and baby care manuals, asked questions that made Ada laugh because they were so earnest and worried. What if I'm bad at this? He asked one evening as they assembled the crib in what would be Kamara's room once she outgrew the bassinet. What if I mess her up somehow? Then you'll mess her up the same way every parent messes up their kid a little bit. Ada handed him another screw. Nobody's perfect at this, Ji-Hwan. We just have to love her and try our best, that's all we can do. What if my best isn't good enough? She looked at him then, really looked, and saw past the expensive clothes and the business empire to the scared man trying so hard to be worthy of the second chance he'd been given. Your best is already more than enough, she said softly. You're here. You're trying. You care. That's what matters. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent, and she let herself lean into him, let herself hope that maybe, possibly, they really could make this work despite everything stacked against them. But Mrs. Park wasn't done, not by a long shot. Ada was 38 weeks pregnant, so miserable and huge she could barely move, when the eviction notice showed up. Not from her landlord, who she'd always paid on time, but from the management company that had apparently bought the building without telling any of the tenants. They had 30 days to vacate, no exceptions, no negotiations. She knew immediately who was behind it. Who else had the resources and the vindictiveness to pull something like this? I'm going to kill her, Ji-Hwan said when she called him, his voice shaking with rage. I'm literally going to kill my mother. You can't kill her, she's your mother, and also murder is illegal, Ada tried to sound calm even though inside she was screaming. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is her doing. Move in with me. He said it immediately, no hesitation. You're due in 2 weeks anyway. It doesn't make sense for you to be alone in that apartment. Move into my place, both of you, and we'll figure out the rest later. Ji-Hwan, please, The word came out raw, desperate. "I know you want to be independent. I know you don't want to rely on me for everything, but you're about to have our baby and you need somewhere stable to be. Let me provide that at least." She was too tired to argue, too uncomfortable and scared and overwhelmed to keep fighting against help when it was being offered. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll move in, but just temporarily until I can find another place. We'll talk about that later. Right now I'm coming to get you and we're going to pack up what you need. Everything else can be moved over the next few days." He showed up 20 minutes later with boxes and an expression that said he was barely holding it together. They packed in tense silence until Ada said, "Stop looking like that." "Like what?" "Like you're one wrong word away from doing something drastic." She folded another shirt, placed it carefully in the box. "Your mum is horrible." "Yeah, but she's not worth destroying yourself over." "She's trying to destroy you, destroy us." He threw a handful of hangers into a box with more force than necessary. "How am I supposed to just accept that?" "You're not, but you're also not going to fix it by being angry." Ada moved carefully around the bed, pressed her hand to his shoulder. "What we're going to do is survive this. Show her that no matter what she throws at us, we're stronger together. That's the best revenge. Probably the only revenge that matters." He turned into her touch, wrapped his arms gently around her, careful of her belly. "How are you so calm about this?" "I'm not, I'm terrified." She let herself lean into him, let herself take the comfort he was offering. "But I've survived worse things than your mother's disapproval. I left my entire country to come here, worked horrible jobs for terrible pay, dealt with people treating me like I was worthless because of my accent or my skin. Your mum's just one more obstacle, and I've gotten pretty good at navigating those." His laugh was shaky. "You're incredible, you know that." "I'm stubborn, there's a difference." She pulled back to look up at him. "But yeah, I'm pretty incredible too." They finished packing as the sun set, loading everything into Ji-Hwan's car and her beat-up sedan. His penthouse felt overwhelming after her tiny studio, all gleaming surfaces and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He'd already set up a nursery in one of the spare rooms, complete with the crib they'd assembled together and every baby item she could possibly need. "When did you do all this?" she asked, running her hand over the soft bedding. "Last week, when you thought I was working late." He looked almost shy. "I wanted it to be ready, just in case you changed your mind about moving in. Guess I manifested it into reality or something. Or your mother forced my hand and you got lucky." But she was smiling, because despite everything, despite the chaos and the threats and the constant drama, this felt right. Looking at the nursery he'd prepared, at the care he'd taken with every detail, she could almost believe they'd be okay. Almost. Her water broke 3 days later while they were watching a movie on his obscenely comfortable couch. 1 minute she was complaining about back pain, the next there was a gush of fluid, and she was staring down at the puddle on his expensive rug in absolute horror. Oh no, I ruined your rug." "Forget the rug." Ji-Hwan was already moving, grabbing the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, his phone, his keys. We're having a baby right now. It doesn't work that fast." But then a contraction hit, and she had to grab his arm, breathe through the squeezing pain. "Okay, maybe it does." The drive to Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital was a blur of contractions, and Ji-Hwan's increasingly panicked commentary about traffic, and why were there so many red lights, and maybe they should call an ambulance. Ada would have laughed if she wasn't too busy trying not to scream. Labour was, well, it was horrible actually. 12 hours of pain that made her question every life choice that had led to this moment, with Ji-Hwan holding her hand and letting her squeeze hard enough that she was probably cutting off his circulation. He didn't complain once, just kept telling her she was amazing, she was strong, she could do this. "I hate you," she gasped between contractions. "This is all your fault." "I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, her temple, anywhere he could reach. "You're doing so well, Ada, so well." When Kamara finally entered the world at 3:47 in the morning, screaming her tiny lungs out with the same stubbornness her mother possessed, Ada looked at her daughter's perfect face and forgot about the pain, forgot about everything except this moment. Ji-Hwan was crying openly, his hands shaking as the nurse placed Kamara in his arms, and the look on his face was something Ada knew she'd remember for the rest of her life. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's absolutely perfect." "Yeah, she is." Ada reached out to touch Kamara's tiny hand. watched her daughter's fingers curl instinctively around her own. "Hi, baby girl. We've been waiting for you." The nurse took pictures of them, this new little family, and later, when Ada was cleaned up and moved to a recovery room, she scrolled through them with tears streaming down her face. Because they looked happy, looked right, somehow. Like maybe all the struggle had been worth it to get to this moment. Ji-Hwan stayed with them the entire time, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair and refusing to go home even when Ada insisted she'd be fine. He changed Kamara's first diapers, figured out how to swaddle her after watching the nurse demonstrate 3 times, and stared at his daughter like she was the most miraculous thing he'd ever seen, which probably she was. "I want to marry you," he said on the second night, while Kamara slept peacefully in her bassinet, and Ada was finally starting to feel almost human again. "Not because of her, not because I think I'm supposed to, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that every single day." Ada's heart stuttered. "Ji-Hwan, you don't have to answer right now." He took her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens with my mother, whatever other obstacles we face, my endgame is you, Ada. It's always been you." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just squeezed his hand and let the moment sit between them, fragile and hopeful and absolutely terrifying. Because what if he meant it? What if this could actually work? What if she let herself believe and got destroyed all over again? They brought Kamara home to Ji-Hwan's penthouse on a sunny October morning, and Ada felt simultaneously like the luckiest woman alive and like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came 2 weeks later in the form of a letter from Mrs. Park's lawyers, claiming that Ada was an unfit mother and demanding custody be granted to Ji-Hwan exclusively. "She's really doing this," Ada said, staring at the legal document. "She's actually trying to take my baby. She won't win." Ji-Hwan was already on the phone with his own lawyers, his voice cold with fury. "She has no grounds, no evidence, nothing except her own prejudice and anger. But she has money and connections, and I'm just—" Ada looked down at where Kamara was sleeping in her arms, so tiny and perfect and vulnerable. "What if she finds a way? Then we fight." He finished his call, came to sit beside them on the couch. "We fight with every resource we have and we win, because judges aren't stupid. They can see when someone is being malicious, and that's all this is, her last desperate attempt to control the situation. The custody battle was brutal, dragging on for 3 months that felt like 3 years. Mrs. Park's lawyers tried every angle, claiming Ada's apartment history showed instability, that her financial situation made her dependent on Ji-Hwan, that her immigration status was questionable, even though it absolutely wasn't. They hired private investigators who followed her to the grocery store and the pediatrician and took photos that made even the most innocent outings look suspicious. But Ji-Hwan's lawyers were better, meaner, and they had truth on their side. They showed that Ada had been gainfully employed right up until her pregnancy made it physically impossible, that she'd never asked Ji-Hwan for anything, that she was a loving and capable mother who was being harassed by a vindictive grandmother with boundary issues. The judge threw out the case in January, warned Mrs. Park that any further legal action would be considered harassment, and granted Ada and Ji-Hwan joint custody of their daughter. It was a victory, but it felt hollow after months of stress and fear and very little sleep thanks to newborn feedings. "It's over," Ji-Hwan kept saying, but Ada couldn't quite believe it. She kept waiting for the next attack, the next attempt to destroy what they'd built, and it was exhausting living in constant anticipation of disaster. "Talk to me," Ji-Hwan said one night, after they'd gotten Kamara down and were collapsed on the couch together. "You've been distant for weeks and I don't know how to fix it." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Your mother tried to take our daughter, Ji-Hwan. She had lawyers and investigators and a whole campaign designed to prove I was unfit. And yeah, we won, but what if she tries something else? What if she never stops trying to separate us? Then we keep fighting." He pulled her against his side and she let herself lean into him because she was so tired of holding everything together. And eventually she'll realize she's lost, that she can either accept this or lose me completely. I don't want you to lose your mother because of me. You're not the one forcing that choice, she is. His arms tightened around her. I've tried talking to her, tried making her understand, but she refuses to see anything except what she wants. That's on her, Ada, not you. They sat in silence for a while, just breathing together, and slowly Ada felt some of the tension drain from her body. This was what she'd needed, she realized. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but just this, the quiet certainty of having someone beside her who wasn't going anywhere. "I love you," she said, the words feeling both enormous and insufficient. "I don't think I've said it enough, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good." He kissed the top of her head. "Because I love you too, and I'm done being terrified of what that means. You're it for me, Ada. You and Kamara. Everything else is just details." He proposed properly 2 months later, on a weekend trip to Estes Park, where they hiked slowly through Rocky Mountain National Park with Kamara, strapped to Ji-Hwan's chest in a carrier. The mountains were still capped with snow, and the air was so crisp it hurt to breathe. And when he got down on one knee beside a frozen waterfall and pulled out a ring, Ada laughed and cried and said yes before he could even finish his speech. "You didn't let me do the whole thing," he complained, sliding the ring onto her finger. "You could have kept talking for an hour and my answer would still be yes, so what's the point?" She kissed him, soft and gentle and full of promise. Yes to you, yes to us, yes to whatever messy, beautiful life we're building together. They got married. 3 months later, in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, surrounded by friends and a few family members, but notably not Ji-Hwan's mother, who sent a formal decline and nothing else. It should have hurt more, probably, but Ada found she didn't care. She had Ji-Hwan, she had Kamara, who was growing bigger every day, and she had a future that actually looked bright instead of terrifying. Seo-yun tried to crash the reception, showed up claiming she needed to speak with Ji-Hwan about an urgent business matter, but security escorted her out before she could cause a scene. Mrs. Park sent one last letter, offering an obscene amount of money if they'd agree to raise Kamara in Korea, where she could be properly educated in her heritage, but they threw it away without responding. "Do you think she'll ever give up?" Ada asked later, slow dancing with her husband while Kamara snoozed in her grandmother's arms. Ada's mother, who'd flown in from Cameroon for the wedding and was refusing to, put her granddaughter down. "I think eventually she'll realize what she's missing and it'll be too late." Ji-Hwan pulled her closer. "But that's her problem, not ours. We're done letting her dictate our lives." And they were. They bought a house in Highlands Ranch with a yard for Kamara to play in, close enough to Denver that Ji-Hwan could commute, but far enough that it felt separate from the chaos they'd left behind. Ada went back to school, finally finishing her degree in public health that she'd abandoned years ago, while Ji-Hwan handled business deals and changed diapers with equal competence. They had date nights every week, trading off who planned them, rediscovering each other slowly and deliberately. He took her to concerts and museums and little restaurants in neighborhoods she'd never explored. She taught him to cook Cameroonian food, laughing when he butchered the recipes but appreciating the effort. They were building something real, something that didn't rely on grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just the steady accumulation of small moments that added up to a life. Kamara grew, hitting every milestone early because of course she did, stubborn like both her parents. She learned to smile and laugh and grab at everything within reach, and watching Ji-Hwan with their daughter made Ada fall in love with him all over again, every single day. The way he'd get up for middle-of-the-night feedings without complaint, the way he'd sing to her in Korean and English both, the way he'd look at Ada over Kamara's head with such complete contentment that it made her chest ache. Mrs. Park reached out once more, almost a year later, sending a formal letter requesting permission to meet her granddaughter. No apologies, no acknowledgement of everything she'd done, just a simple request that felt more like a demand. "What do you think?" Ji-Hwan asked, handing Ada the letter. She read it twice, then looked at where Kamara was playing on the floor with her blocks, completely oblivious to the adult drama swirling around her. "I think, maybe someday, if she can prove she's changed, if she can treat us with respect. But not now, not when it feels like she's just trying another angle." "Okay." He took the letter back, set it aside. "Then that's what we'll tell her." They did, sending a brief response that said maybe in the future, but certain conditions would need to be met first. Mrs. Park never responded, and honestly, Ada was fine with that. She'd stopped waiting for disaster, stopped expecting the worst, and started just living. Living and loving and building this beautiful, messy, imperfect life with the man who'd fought his way back to her and the daughter who'd made everything worth it. "No regrets?" Ji-Hwan asked one evening. almost 2 years after that first encounter in the hallway where everything had started again. Ada looked around their home, at the photos covering the walls and the toys scattered across the floor and the life they'd created together. "Not a single one," she said honestly, "not even the hard parts, because they brought us here." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent, and she leaned into him, into this moment, into the absolute certainty that sometimes the best stories are the ones that refuse to follow the script, that fight through every obstacle and come out stronger on the other side. Their story wasn't perfect, probably never would be, but it was theirs, and that was more than enough. Thank you for listening to their journey this far. Click that like button if you enjoyed watching love survive against all odds, drop a comment telling me which part made you tear up, and subscribe because there are plenty more stories where this came from.